Hi team, welcome back to our Introduction to Canadian History Anchor Fact series of printables and mini lessons. We saw in the last lesson that France and England both wanted to take over America. Today, we will learn which one of them won that contest, which changed the entire fate of Canada. It all comes down to the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 63, the next of our anchor facts. Ever since the French settled Quebec in 1608 and the English settled Jamestown in 1607, they were each gobbling up as much land as possible. Eventually, they collided in what is today Pennsylvania at the site of Fort Pitt, which is today Pittsburgh. They both valued this spot because it gave access to the Ohio River, which feeds into the Mississippi and flows all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, or as some people like to call it now, the Gulf of America. Not surprisingly, this led to a fight. There had, in fact, been 3 colonial wars between France and Britain before the 7 Years' War. In Canadian history, they are named after the English kings and queens of the time. King William's War was the first. It was caused because a Catholic king of England, James II, was deposed in favor of King William, who was a Protestant. This triggered a war in Europe, and therefore in North America. Queen Anne's War is obviously named after Queen Anne of England, but it was mainly caused by the fact that the King of Spain had died without an heir. So in Europe, it is called the War of the Spanish Succession. The same thing happened with King George's War. It was actually a much bigger war, known as the War of the Austrian Succession, because, as you must have guessed, the King of Austria died without an heir. Let's pause for a moment and consider something important about colonial history. Colonies belonged to their mother country, and their story was dominated by the story of that mother country. If there were wars in Europe, there were wars in North America. That's why it's so important to learn European history in addition to Canadian history. So there were 3 major colonial wars before the 7 Years' War, but none of them had any decisive result. This final one would decide everything. In the decisive battle on the Plains of Abraham outside of Quebec, the British defeated the French, and Quebec surrendered. As we see in this amazing painting, which may be the most dramatic image of Canadian history, the British General Wolfe is dying. He has been struck. He's bleeding, and he's almost dead. But the men surrounding him are pointing back to the left as someone races forward from the battle scene in the background. He has a flag signaling surrender. General Wolfe died at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, but he won the war for the British. Canada became part of the British Empire. So how was that going to work for the French Canadians? In a way, that's been the toughest question to answer in all of Canadian history. And apparently, it's still not settled. Quebec still keeps talking about seceding or leaving from Canada today. As for the result of the war, it not only brought Canada into the British Empire, but it had another huge result. That was that the British decided to raise taxes in their empire to pay for the war. They did this by putting a stamp tax on their American colonies. As you may know, this was the trigger for the American Revolution. The Americans complained of their treatment by the British government and eventually rebelled. But Canada did not join them. That creates a puzzle. If Canada was French and it was conquered by the British, why did the French Canadians not join in the rebellion against Britain? Why did they remain loyal? The answer is important, and we'll cover it next time when we discuss the theme of the Loyalists. Don't forget that you can watch these videos one at a time as they are released on YouTube if you like, but you can also go to the Noble World website for the full printables package and complete video series, including the timeline. and activity pack for this entire series available on demand, all for free. It's all there at knowableworld.com.